Chapter 5. The Young Mistress Turns 10. Another year passed. Eris's education was progressing smoothly. Her swordplay was so impressive that she became intermediate tier before her 10th birthday. That meant she could contend with the average swordsman. Ghislaine said that, even though she was just 9, she might rise to advanced tier in a few more years. Our young mistress was quite the genius. As for me, if asked directly, I would avoid your gaze. It seemed that I was no genius at swordplay. Eris's ability to read and write was, well, functional at least. Ghislaine, who had been deceived numerous times and even sold as a slave because she couldn't read, tried desperately to memorize everything. Unfortunately, Eris lagged when it came to arithmetic. It was her weak spot. There was no point in panicking, though. I had no idea what she would grow up to do, but highly advanced math wasn't necessary in this world. She just had to master the 4 basic principles in 5 years. That was enough. Magic lessons had been proceeding apace, but it felt like we had hit a slight impasse. Through chanting, the two could perform most of the basic spells. Eris had mastered just about every school of magic besides Earth, but Ghislaine could only do fire spells. I wondered about the difference in their abilities, even though they were both taking the same classes. Was Ghislaine just poor at water, wind, and earth spells? What I observed seemed to indicate so, but I couldn't be sure. At any rate, it was clear that just chanting spells out of the magic textbook wasn't enough for them to overcome this issue. Casting different schools of magic had come quite naturally to me, so I didn't know how to help them. I'd been making them practice silent casting recently, but the results were less than satisfactory. Sylphie was able to do it easily, so I wondered if it was an age issue, or perhaps Sylphie was just especially skilled. Maybe it was just a futile endeavor. It might be best to just move on to intermediate spells. But Eris and Ghislaine were both swordswomen, so it would be better to have them master basic spells because they were more versatile. In the end, I decided to keep my lessons as they were. I wanted to believe they would be able to cast without chanting someday. Eris's 10th birthday was drawing close. A person's 10th birthday was a special one. It was customary for the nobility to host large parties for a child on their 5th, 10th, and 15th birthdays. On Eris's birthday, the large reception hall and conjoining courtyard were opened to the party. Presents poured in from all over, and all the nobles of Roa were invited to attend. Since Soros was the boorish military type, the initial plan was for a self-service, standing buffet, until Philip intervened and turned it into a dance party to make it easier for the local, less wealthy nobles to attend. The manor was bustling with frantic movement. Maids with dog ears rushed to and fro in the hallways. Maids weren't supposed to run in general, but apparently this household let them do so when things got busy. Some were full-on sprinting even, fast enough that they could hit a transfer student as they were rounding the corner and send them rocketing to the moon. I kept to the edge of the hallway where I wouldn't get in their way. I had no real destination in mind. I was just going for a walk. That was right, a walk. I had nothing to do with the frantic bustle. Right now, Eris was preparing for her leading role in the party by taking special etiquette lessons, so our classes had been cancelled. Philip had requested that Eris at least make sure she act like a 10-year-old child without causing any shame on herself. Apparently, she didn't meet that standard, because Edna, with a look of exhaustion, requested a drastic increase in the number of lessons with Eris. I honored Edna's request, and thus came days of Edna keeping Eris from morning till night for her special lessons. That left me completely unoccupied. Of course, I was attending the party as a house guest, as it was really Eris's celebration. There was nothing for me to do except stand in a corner and eat. Nothing special was required of me. I thought I should perhaps participate and practice etiquette with my newfound freedom, but if I spent every single day training, I would just wear myself out. Plus, I wanted to look around the manor while everyone was busy with preparations. This would be the first big event I'd attended. Surely there was someone around who could use my help, although the only thing I could really do was taste test. Come to think of it, do birthdays here come with cakes? They didn't in Buena Village, but cakes apparently existed here, and I had never seen one, but sometimes a person wanted to eat something sweet. With these thoughts in mind, I headed for the kitchen. I could have asked about the existence of cake, but I really wanted to take a walk. If my fortune was good, I might also find some food samples for the party. Yeah. Also, I was hungry. Was it still not time for lunch? No more! Right then, the door in front of me banged open, and Eris came flying out. Her shoulders were hunched as she dashed down the hall at an impressive speed and disappeared around the corner. Edna came chasing after her. "Young mistress!" She looked both ways and sighed when she saw no trace of Eris. She began yawning, only seeing me halfway through. She offered me a weak smile. "Well, hello there, Lord Rudius." It was a smile that begged for me to listen. Such an expression was rare for Edna. "You must be exhausted, Miss Edna." "I'm sorry you had to see that." I raised a hand as I approached her, and Edna bowed in a graceful movement. I put my hand to my chest and returned the bow. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Well, this is a bit embarrassing, but the young mistress ran off." Well, yes, I knew that since I watched it happen. It was pretty incredible. She was gone in a mere second. I was pretty good at running away myself, but I was nothing compared to Eris. Edna looked troubled as she put her hand to her cheek. "You see, I have been teaching her dancing lately, but she just can't seem to get it right. Now, every time I try to teach her, she runs off." "I see. That is troubling. I understand how you feel." "Mostly because she used to run from me, too." Eris was the type who refused to do something she didn't like. Edna had it rough. Catching Eris was no easy feat. "There's less than a month until her birthday. If things continue like this, she'll shame herself in front of her guests." Edna said it like that was such a terrible thing. But wasn't it a bit late for that? Eris already had a healthy reputation for being a violent little thing. Being unable to dance at a party seemed pretty far down the potential shame list. "This is a 10th birthday. It's special. Becoming a laughingstock on that day seems far too cruel. Don't you think, Lord Rudius?" She kept glancing over at me. If she wanted something from me, I wanted her to say it explicitly. "So, what do you want me to do?" If you wouldn't mind, Lord Rudius, couldn't you persuade her for me to come back for her dance lessons?" There it was. Why did I agree to her request? Because I had nothing else to do, I suppose, and because of something Edna said. Becoming a laughingstock on that day seems far too cruel. In this world, there was a custom of large celebrations on your 5th, 10th, and 15th birthdays. Only those 3 times. It was tragic to imagine such a joyous day yielding nothing but painful memories. With a little effort from me, the day could be truly enjoyable. Without it, there would be nothing but sadness. If I had just studied a little harder back in my previous life, I could have gotten into a different middle school. Then those horrible things might never have happened. I might not have closed myself off from the world. Not that I thought Eris would do that, but she might end up with awful memories that would linger long after. With that in mind, I began looking for her. Fortunately, I found her immediately. She was behind the stables, laying her back atop a pile of hay. She exhaled with a foul look when she saw me. I climbed up and sat beside her. I heard you can't dance very well. Whoa! She shoved me off the haystack with a kick. I managed to land safely and turned to guard myself. Eris was the type to always launch a follow-up attack. If I wasn't prepared, I'd have a drop kick coming at the back of my unprotected head. Or so I thought, but the follow-up never came. She just remained sprawled on the hay, staring up at me. I climbed back up and sat beside her. This time, I grabbed onto the hay so I wouldn't be set flying. Rather, that was my plan, until I felt an impact on top of my head. Ouch! Her heel was perched on the crown of my head. There wasn't enough power behind it to be an axe kick, so it seemed like she was just resting it there. She was in a foul mood, but didn't seem to have much energy. Won't you go back to practice? I don't need to know how to dance. I glanced at her. She was still looking up at the sky, but I won't dance on my birthday either, she proclaimed frankly. But there was no way the star of a dance party could forego dancing. I had never participated in one, but I knew she'd somehow be dragged into dancing in front of everyone when the day came. Why do I have to do something I'm not good at? She groused, lips pursing into a pout. I understood how she felt, but running away just made things worse for the future. Yeah, when you put it like that, it's kind of difficult to answer. What did I have to say to get her to understand? I knew she wouldn't listen if I told her she would just regret it. That was the logic of an adult with regrets. You had to experience the emotion yourself to understand it. You don't get it. You can do anything, she said. No, there are certainly things I can't do. There are? Of course. She didn't ask me what they were. Instead, she just looked at me with an expression that said she didn't believe me at all. But I do think that when you put in maximum effort towards something you're not good at, you'll feel that much more accomplished when you finally succeed. You think so? She continued staring at the sky, not looking the least bit convinced. I'll help out too. Why don't you give dance practice one more chance? I won't. That killed the conversation right there. I couldn't find any other words to say. It looked like it was impossible after all. Maybe I was better off asking Ghislaine for help. Of course, she probably wouldn't see the need to learn to dance either, even if I didn't see it. The only people who did were probably Edna and Philip. Maybe I should ask Philip. As I thought that, Eris removed her foot from my head. Then she kicked her leg hard, using the recoil to propel herself off the hay and onto the ground.
Rudius,
Yes?
I'm going back to my dance lessons. Come with me.
Did what I just said work? Or was she just being her usual whimsical self? Whatever it was, she seemed to have found some motivation, so I was glad. Very well, young mistress. I followed her back to the dance hall. Helping with her lessons meant I was learning to dance myself. For things like this, you improved faster by having a partner. That said, I had never danced a day in either of my lives. My experience, at best, was limited to playing dancing games at the arcade during middle school, so I was a bit worried. Wonderful. You are truly skilled at this. Contrary to my expectations, I had already mastered some of the beginner steps. Dance was all about remembering the routine and matching your movements to the rhythm. My previous self may have struggled from utter lack of exercise, but my current self was pretty fit. The simplest of the steps didn't require much getting used to. Eris sulked when Edna complimented me. She had spent months working on this only to fail, so of course she felt bitter watching me master it so easily. I wasn't just learning to dance, however. I was observing Eris so I could figure out why she was struggling. There were two reasons for this. The first was that Edna was a terrible teacher. Well, not a terrible teacher exactly. She was probably average. It was her method of saying, "Do it this way, do it that way, and just memorize what I'm telling you." That was the problem. She never touched on why those things were necessary. The second reason was Eris's failing. Her steps were too fast and too sharp. Her personality and movements were well suited to the sword god style, but they were a drawback when it came to dancing. When she should have been lightly moving her feet to the rhythm of the music, she instead rigidly maneuvered her body at top speed, falling out of sync with her partner. Eris had her own rhythm and instinctively disliked being interrupted. She maintained it protectively, no matter the circumstances, so no one could disrupt her flow. It was an incredible ability on the battlefield, but it only held her back in dance. Dance was all about matching your partner. According to Edna, this was the first time she had ever encountered a student with absolutely no skill for dance. That wasn't the case, though. Moving so quickly meant that there was a sharpness to her movements. In a dance routine that required that, she could dance beautifully. So that was why her teaching style wasn't working, though blaming Edna would not fix Eris's movements. Still, there was something that could be done. As I watched Eris clumsily move through her dance steps, I decided to try something. "Eris, please close your eyes and try swinging your body to your own rhythm." She looked doubtfully at me.
What are you planning? Making me close my eyes?
"Lord Rudius," Edna's gentle smile wavered. "Oh, no, this isn't what you think. I'm not trying to kiss her," I thought defensively. How rude of you guys, accusing a gentleman like me. "I'm going to use magic to help you dance."
What? A spell for that exists?
"No, I said magic. There's no spell. It's more of a miraculous phenomenon. She tilted her head, but did as I asked. Her dancing followed the same rhythm I had seen so many times during our sword lessons. Quick, detailed, precise, but always irregular. Her movements were unpredictable and naturally disrupted the rhythm of her opponent. I could never imitate them, not even if I wanted to. The rhythm of a natural egotist. I'm going to clap my hands now. Try to match that rhythm with your steps as if you're dodging an incoming attack. As I said that, I began smacking my hands together in a regular beat. Eris matched the rhythm in quick, precise movements. I repeated that for a bit, calling out to her at certain intervals. Yes, yes, it was always right before I clapped. Eris would wait for a moment, then react as soon as she heard my hands come together. This is... Edna raised her voice in amazement. Eris had danced the steps correctly. She was still a bit too fast, but at least she matched the rhythm. Edna balled her hands into fists and with an unusually excited smile yelled, "You did it! You did it, young mistress!" Eris opened her eyes, all smiles and joy, and said, "Really?" I continued my instruction, essentially raining on their parade. Okay, keep your eyes closed. You need to remember what you just did now. Remember it? I'm just watching for an opponent's feints and dodging them. That's right. This was the same thing we did during our sword lessons when we dodged Ghislaine's attacks. Each time she made a feint, she would call out, "Yes," so we would learn to dodge only the real attacks. Even Ghislaine's feints were full of murderous intent. In comparison, it was easy to tell by my voice when I was feinting or not. Incredibly, I had better results during that lesson than Edna did. Eris was too gullible, so she fell for the feints easily. Eris, you can use things you learn in one lesson in others. When you struggle with something, try to think about whether you have done anything similar in any of your other lessons. Okay. In contrast to her usual demeanor, Eris didn't say anything else and just nodded, eyes still wide open. Looks like the problem was solved. I shouldn't be surprised. You have given the young mistress arithmetic lessons for more than a year now, after all, Edna said. She seemed thoroughly impressed, her eyes full of emotion as she looked at me. Shouldn't be surprised, huh? So that was the level of hopelessness associated with teaching Eris arithmetic. Well, I did struggle quite a bit. I owed half of the credit to Ghislaine. I couldn't let it go to my head. This was an incredible learning experience for me. It seems swordplay and dance have something in common after all. Edna looked like she had seen something unbelievable, like, "O Father in heaven, I have witnessed a miracle," or something like that. Totally over the top. Well, there are dances that use swords after all. Dance and swordplay are strongly related, I said. A dance with swords? Something like that really exist? She asked with wonder. Sword dancing seemed like common knowledge to my inner middle school nerd, but maybe it didn't exist in this world. Yeah, but I've only read about it in books, I said. Well then, in the literature you read, where did it say the dances come from? Well, it seemed like it was from a desert country. Desert? The Begarit continent, then. I don't know. As unlikely as it sounds, it could be that demon races in the demon continent dance that way. Hear they have lots of small clans, so maybe someone from there dances using swords. I responded uncertainly. I see. So it's that collection of knowledge of various things that gives you such wisdom, Lord Rudius, she said, smiling kindly as she complimented me. Looks like she convinced herself of the fact.
That's right. Brutus is amazing,
Eris interjected proudly, for some odd reason. That's right. Praise me some more, I thought. I'm the type that feeds off of praise. The day of the dance party. Eris was all dolled up and seated like a princess when Soros roared for the festivities to begin. I hunkered down in a corner and observed from there. During the party's opening ceremony, Philip and his wife deftly handled the poorer and lesser nobles that swarmed around the family. They conducted themselves so impressively that no one could find an opening to slip through them. If someone did happen to get through, they would be faced with Soros himself. They would quickly look for ways to make their escape once they found themselves on the receiving end of his booming voice and irrationally one-sided way of talking. If they happened to get by him, they would be where they desired at last, in front of the star herself, Eris. Eris, who had no authority whatsoever and didn't understand anything about politics. She turned into a robot that parroted the words,
"Please tell my father,"
whenever anything was brought up. Some brought their sons along to introduce to her, young and middle-aged men with good upbringings. Some were our age, but almost all of them were loud and obnoxious. They had probably lived their entire lives at home without a care in the world. It was like looking at my past self. Just as I began feeling some kinship with them, it was time to dance. Like we planned from the beginning, I took up my role as Eris's first dance partner. It was the simplest, most childish dance, but because Eris was the star, we took to the center of the room. We just needed to do as we practiced.
"What are you doing?"
As the music began playing, Eris turned rigid with nervousness. There was no way we could dance properly like this. Forget that. She might actually knock me on my ass and take off running. I used my gaze and my steps to add some feints into our routine. When I did, she immediately set her lips into a pout.
"What's that for?"
she mumbled again, but this time she sounded less nervous and more like her usual self. After that, she stepped on my foot a few times, but we managed to end the dance without falling. "You did well, Lord Rudius," Edna called out as if finished. Apparently, she could tell I had calmed the young mistress's nerves even from afar. When she asked me how I did it, I simply replied that I did the same thing we did in practice. Edna wore a look of amazement, but when I told her it was the same as swordsplay, she let a giggle slip. My duties were done, so it was time to bring on food. There was an unusually large selection today, including some sort of weird sweet and sour fruit pie, a meat dish that used a whole cow's head, and a beautifully arranged cake. As I was stuffing my face, I caught sight of Ghislaine, who was standing guard. Her eyes weren't exactly begging for food, but she did have some drool dripping off her chin. Fortunately, I was a man who could read the room. I wrapped some food in a napkin and instructed a maid to take it to my quarters. The guards and the servants would have a luxurious feast themselves after this, I heard, but nothing like the food that was being offered here. As I was almost done having the food carried off, my eyes fell upon a cute little girl in front of me. "A pleasure to make your acquaintance," she said, before offering me her name. She was the daughter of one of the minor nobles. Her name was so long I couldn't remember the whole thing. "Won't you share a dance with me?" she asked. I explained that I only knew the basics before we headed onto the dance floor. I thought I actually danced pretty well. When it was over, another girl came, and again I was asked to dance. What the hell is this? I'm pretty popular, huh? They came one after the other. Among them, a woman over 30 and a girl younger than I was. I turned them down if our height difference presented a problem, but in general I said yes to anyone who asked. It wasn't like I was a Japanese person who couldn't say no. It was just that after telling the first girl yes, it was difficult to refuse the rest. Maybe I had an ulterior motive, but there were so many of them I couldn't remember their names or faces. So I just exhausted myself. Once my popularity waned enough, Philip approached me and explained. That was my father's doing. Apparently, when people asked Soros who the boy was who danced with Eris in the beginning, he boastfully told them I was a member of the Grey Rat family. In other words, everything was old man Soros's fault. Not that I could really blame him. He'd been asked about me. That boy who danced with the young mistress at first, he did a splendid job of calming her nerves. Could he be one of your illegitimate children, Lord Soros? That was apparently enough to get him in good spirits. We'd planned to keep my surname a secret, but maybe it was inevitable since alcohol was in the mix. But now that they knew my last name, they could assume that I was a member of the Branch family or the child of a mistress. I was going to be somebody of note in either case, so the nobles sent their daughters and granddaughters after me. I asked him, wouldn't it have made more sense to approach me right after the first dance? He said he noticed me wrapping up sweets in napkins and found it so endearing that he decided to wait until I was finished. People who paid attention really noticed every detail. When I asked him what I should do about the women who approached me, he told me to engage with them freely. It seemed no matter how things played out in the future, he didn't intend for me to get involved with politics. Or perhaps he thought it might be politically beneficial if I ended up with one of those girls. I hadn't the least bit of interest in wielding political power, so for me, today's short brush with fame was like a transient dream. But wait, maybe if I become more powerful, I can have all the cute girls I want, I thought for a moment. I do ask that you refrain from following Paul's example by not sleeping with every single woman you meet, lest you stain the noble name of our house. Well, Philip nipped that right in the bud then. Eris was the last girl to approach me. Her usual vivid and energetic aesthetic was replaced with a blue dress. Her hair was arranged in an updo with a floral ornament tucked into it. She looked quite lovely. It seemed even she was exhausted after attending her first ever dance party and being approached by unfamiliar adults, one after another. Yet she still seemed excited, perhaps because she was the star of a party that was going so well.
Won't you have a dance with me?
Gone was the usual loud voice, wide-legged stance, and untamed expression of the ill-mannered heiress I knew. She held herself just as gracefully as any of the other girls who had approached me. "Gladly." I took her hand, and we headed into the hall. As we moved to the center of the dance floor, Eris looked around and giggled lightly, all prim and proper. Suddenly, a song with an irregular, fast-paced rhythm began playing. One we had never practiced before. Maybe the musician was trying to be mindful of the guests. What? That one metaphorical punch was enough to throw Eris off, all because she was putting on her weird act. She looked pleadingly at me, and I began inserting feints to the rhythm of the music. It had an irregular beat, but that fit Eris's style better, although her steps were rather disorganized. If Edna saw, she would probably get angry or exasperated. I held her hand and moved in and out just as we did during sword practice. We matched our movements to the music, but they were still erratic. We probably looked quite peculiar to the onlookers. Eris was enjoying herself. She was finally laughing like a girl her age should, rather than being sullen and pouty as she usually was. Just seeing that was enough to make me feel like it was worth attending this party. Applause erupted when the dance finished. Soros came running over, lifted the both of us onto his shoulders, and ran around the courtyard laughing the whole way. It was a pretty enjoyable party. When the party was over, I invited Ghislaine and Eris to my room. In truth, I only intended to invite Ghislaine, but Eris was with her, so I extended the offer to Eris as well. Eris's stomach growled when she saw the table full of food. She must have been too excited and nervous during the party to eat much of anything. I let out a wry laugh before pulling out some cheap wine I had purchased in the city and hidden in the depths of my dresser. It was meant for Ghislaine, but Eris wanted to drink as well, so I poured 3 cups. We clinked glasses and drank. The legal drinking age in this country was 15, but we were ignoring that today. It was okay to do something wild occasionally. After swallowing the last of my glass, something occurred to me. I stood. "This timing is perfect for my gift," I announced, retrieving 2 wands from the shelf beside my bed.
What? What's that?
I guess you could call it a birthday present.
Seriously? I'd rather have one of those.
Eris pointed to the various miniature replicas I had made recently while practicing my earth magic. There was a dragon, a ship, and even a figurine of Sylphie all lined up. Not to brag, but in my previous life, I had been really into figures and plastic models in my 20s. I even made a homemade booth out of cardboard so I could paint them at one point. Unfortunately, materials cost a lot in this world, and there was no such thing as spray paint, so they weren't painted. Still, it was fun, and I loved making the parts and putting them together, so they were quite detailed, even if they were the creations of an amateur. I did sell my first 8th scale Roxy figurine to a peddler for 1 gold coin. He was probably off traveling the world right now. Well, that aside. According to my master, a magic teacher should present their apprentices with a wand. I didn't know how to make one, nor did I have the money to buy the materials, so it's a little bit late, but I hope you'll take it. As soon as Ghislaine heard that, she stood and took a respectful knee before me. Ah, I knew what this was. This was the pose used by a disciple of the sword god to pay respect to their teacher. Yes, Master Rudius, I will gladly accept this. Indeed, she presented herself so humbly that I had to pass it to her as respectfully as possible. She gazed at it happily. Now I can call myself a magician, right? Ah, so that's what this was about. She was going to call herself a magician. Roxy and I never discussed that, but no. This was just an object to show that you had started on lessons and nothing more. Could you really call yourself a magician if you had only begun learning magic? It seemed my master had not explained enough to me. So Eris, is this the one you want? I tried lightening the mood by presenting the Sylphie figurine to her, but she just shook her head.
No! That! I want that wand.
All right, here you are. She snatched it from my hand. Then, as if remembering how humbly Ghislaine had presented herself, she corrected herself and respectfully took it with both hands.
Thank you, Master Rudius.
Yes, be sure to take care of it. Eris glanced meaningfully at Ghislaine. What's that about, I wondered. Ghislaine froze for a moment before looking away. I'm sorry, there's no such custom in my race. I don't have anything. So that's what it was about. Eris was hoping for a birthday gift. Eris retreated to the sofa, looking disappointed. Maybe there was no custom for employees offering their employers gifts, but I still felt bad that Eris didn't get anything. She loved Ghislaine and saw her almost like an older sister. I could at least help out. Ghislaine, you don't have to give her anything special. Just something you usually wear on your person. Something she could think of as a charm. Anything like that. She thought for a moment, then slipped off one of the rings on her finger. It was a wooden ring, quite worn with scratches all over it. It reflected a slight greenish light. I wasn't sure if it was due to some magic cast upon it, or simply the material it was made from. This ring is a talisman passed down in my clan. They say it protects the bearer from being attacked by bad wolves at night.
Can I really have it?
Yeah, it's only superstition. Eris nervously took it from her. After slipping it onto her right middle finger, she squeezed both hands to her chest.
I'll take good care of it.
She looked even happier than she did when I gave her that wand. Now, I felt like I lost to Ghislaine. Oh well, it was a ring. Eris was a girl, right? So it made sense. Something nagged at me, so I voiced my suspicions. Superstition? So does that mean you've been attacked by wolves? Ghislaine wore a troubled expression. Yes. It was so hot I couldn't sleep that night. So Paul invited me to take a shower and... Changed my mind, that's enough. I already know what happens after that. No more. If we continued that conversation, it would just worsen my reputation. Damn that Paul. He was always getting in my way. All right. Well, I don't want to ask details about you and your father. Sounds good to me. All right, then. Let's eat. The food's cold, but let's dig in anyway. And let's forget about that whole teacher-apprentice relationship for now. And that was how Eris's 10th birthday came safely to an end. When I woke the next day, Eris was right beside me. She had such a fierce personality, but her sleeping face was so relaxed and adorable. Wow. Oh no. Did I lose my V card? Of course not. I could still remember what happened clearly. In the middle of the party last night, Eris got sleepy and she passed out on my bed. That was when Ghislaine said she was going back and left Eris there, returning to her own room. Well, they did say a man was a fool not to eat a meal set in front of him. Let's play a little trick on her, I thought, licking my lips as I approached her. But Eris was sleeping happily, hugging the wand I had given her to her chest with Ghislaine's trinket on her finger. The bad wolf, with its face full of lust, retreated. Looks like your little talisman does have some effect after all, I whispered. I slipped out of bed without disturbing her rest. It was still early in the morning. If you peeked outside, you would see the sky just beginning to light, but everything was still dark. I could have stayed and watched Eris as she slept, but she would probably punch me when she woke up. Instead, I decided to go for a walk, so I left my bed and tiptoed my way out of the room. Now then, I began debating where to go as I traversed the chilly hallways. The manor gates didn't open until later in the morning, so I couldn't go outside. There weren't many options. I had learned the general layout of the manor in the year that I had been here, but there were still many places I had never been. For instance, the single looming tower that I was told never to approach. That piqued my interest. Maybe I could get my hands on something good there, like someone's underwear drying in the shade. With that thought, I took the stairs to the manor's top floor. There, I wandered aimlessly until I finally came upon some interesting spiral stairs. This had to be the entrance to that tower. I was told not to go near it, but yesterday was Eris's birthday. I decided that meant I could flout the rules for today and started climbing. The tower's external height matched the number of steps winding inside it. Around and around and around I went as I ascended more of them than I could count. That was when I heard a voice from above. Meow! Meow! A seductive voice that almost sounded like a cat in heat. I tried to silence my footsteps by tiptoeing the rest of the stairs. At the top, I found Soros. He was inside a room so small barely a single person could fit, getting busy with one of the cat-eared maids. Ah, so this was why they told me not to come here. Soros noticed I was there right after I had gotten a good look at them. The maid had noticed me before him. It even seemed to excite her. Once the deed was finished, the cat-eared girl brushed past me on her way down the stairs. Rudius, huh? Soros' voice was quiet, calm, different from his usual demeanor. This was the wise old man mode. Yes, Lord Soros, good morning. He stopped me with a gesture when I moved my hand to my chest and tried to bow. That's enough. What did you come here for? There were stairs, so I climbed them. You like tall places? He asked. Yes. Although, if I looked out the window here, my legs would probably freeze up. Liking tall places and being okay with them were two very different things. Even if I conquered the entire world and built the tallest tower ever, I would still have my room on the bottom floor. So, what are you doing here? I asked. I was praying to that gem there. Huh? This house had an awfully degenerate way of praying. But I wasn't going to say that. Even though Soros normally seemed so strict, he was still a member of the Grey Rat family, still an apple from the same tree. What gem? I peered out of the bay window and saw a single red gem hovering in the sky. Perhaps it was the light, but it looked like something was moving inside it. It was amazing. Was it floating there by magic? What is that? I don't know. He shook his head. I found it there 3 years ago, but it's nothing bad. How can you say that? It's better to think of it that way. I understood. He was right. The gem was out of reach. Convincing yourself it was something bad would only have a negative impact on your mental health. Better instead to think it was something good and pray to it. I prayed too. Rudius, I'm going to go out on a long ride. Will you come? I'd be honored. The old man had just fired his gun, so to speak, yet he was still energetic. He was apparently willing to spend time with me today since he had no other plans. Yay! Was probably what I should have said, but the whole thing just sounded exhausting. By the way, I started to ask. What? Do you not have a wife? I heard a crunching noise. When I realized it was Soros grinding his teeth, a chill ran down my spine. She's dead. Oh, I see. I'm very sorry to hear that. He'd had such a good time with the cat-eared girl, and now I made him remember something unpleasant. In that case, it was best I not ask about whether Eris had any siblings either. All right, then, let's go. All right. Today was one of our days off. Tomorrow, Eris would have to work hard again. Name, Eris B. Greyrat. Occupation, granddaughter of Fatoa's liege lord. Personality, a little violent. Does, listen properly. Reading and writing, almost perfect at reading. Arithmetic, can do numbers up to 99. Magic, can chant almost all the basic spells. Fencing, sword god style, intermediate tier. Etiquette, skilled enough not to embarrass herself at a party. People she likes. Grandfather, Ghislaine, Rudius.